Chat. So welcome to Biz Chat Monday View Influencer with our special guest, Kiff VandenHueval. Yay! Kiff, it's great to see you again. Welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a special first ever guest on VO Influencer.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, dude. It's great. It's great to see. It's nice. I mean, I don't know everybody in the room, but it's great to see Ken, and
Yeah,
certainly great to see you too, Rebecca. And
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, the reason why Ken and I mean, the reason Ken, the reason why Kiff and I know each other so well is because he ran the voiceover improv workouts that I hold on Mondays. He ran them for almost 3 years or 3 years, right before you went to Australia during COVID and had a TV show you were in for 6 months.
Yeah.
So we recently reconnected, caught up, and I said I was doing this thing, and would he like to be my first guest? And he said, I'll check my calendar, and yes, I can. So thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, you know what I did since then is see Kiff. He's great in voiceover and he's great at improv. In fact, when we first met, like you told me, like I had a little questionnaire thing and he filled out that he was an expert, like at the level of Tina Fey and everybody else that you know, and he is. But I was like so shocked that I could meet somebody that was so good and felt so confident to say that, right? So we had this first conversation and I was just, oh my God, you are so good. It's like good, bow down to Kiff. And then you got involved, or you were already involved, and I just didn't know yet about on-camera work, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
On camera, I started at the same time I started voiceover. Um,
okay,
Same time, just because I started in a market where there was no differentiation between the two. So
yeah,
if you wanted to, my first gig professionally as a performer was in VO, but that was Toledo and it was on hold messaging and regional, like it was all so
anything.
much like, yeah, you raise your hand and go, I could do voiceover. And they're like, well, great. It's
Great.
nice to know another person who can do it. So, and then when I started in Detroit, my agents were just like, opportunity, voiceover on camera, whatever. Because a lot of it was industrial in Detroit, industrial and commercial. So that was really where I cut my teeth and got experience working on both sides.
Right. And so if you guys are curious, you can go look Kiff up on IMDb and look at his latest reel, which I was just enjoying watching. Um, yeah, it was great. Did you like have a favorite thing that you've done so far? Would it be voiceover or on camera? Or could you pick one from each category?
Yeah, one from each is a little bit easier. They're so radically different. Like every one is a highlight. I mean, it's been the blessing of working in this market because the job is fun, but who you get to work with is what makes it great. And doing Young Rock for the second two seasons, that was why I went to Australia and I played Pat Patterson, who was a legendary wrestling coach and wrestler and sort of an influence on Dwayne the Rock Johnson, which is why he was part of the show. And I got to play three different eras of Pat. Um, that was, I mean, it was a life changing job.
Mm.
Not necessarily financially. It was a life changing job in that um, I made lifelong friends. I wouldn't be living in the house that we're in with this studio was built by the guy who played Macho Man Randy Savage. So like the influence of those relationships yeah, radically transformed my life. And so I would say that is probably the biggest. Even though I mean, I've gotten to work with A-list talent um, over and over, and it's been that's been a real delight. In terms of voiceover, it's a big credit, but it's also my favorite in that I played Grug on the Crude's Family Tree, and again, it was another one of those things where if you know me, you know I do impressions, and impressions I always knew were my way into animation and a big part of why we came here. Not
Hmm.
necessarily to get into animation, but to be able to use that skill set
Yeah.
because I do voice matching and a fair amount of animation and video game stuff. That work just isn't in the other markets that I was. It's it's not fair to say it's not there, but there's such a frequency that if you want to do video games and animation, you still want to be in this market to be able to pursue that. And
Right.
those jobs are high profile to an extent, but they're also not necessarily as lucrative as an e-learning contract. So like I mean, if I do a guest spot on a Disney cartoon, it's great that I got to do a Disney cartoon, but it's a day rate. It's $1,000, and the usage or residuals on that are not spectacular because everything is streaming. So you know, part of the reason I'm sharing the financials of this stuff too is like
That's great.
I don't want, because there's this fanciness and glitter
Oh,
surround
yeah. The
gig.
Hollywood idea, the
Yeah,
celebrity status of animation.
yeah, and you can get there. It's possible, but like, I mean, Fred Tatasciore, dear friend of mine, and that guy is on everything. So it's about volume.
Yeah.
And you can renegotiate and all that other kind of stuff. But the people who are making the big money in animation are also the people who are either high profile A-list celebrities stepping down into that space, or they got in at the right time and are just they're just veterans. They're just around. You just know them. So
Yeah.
I'm in that space of like I'm working towards that space in the animation space, trying to break through, and I've gotten, between Grug and then a handful of other things, and then recently I was just on Marvel's What If. I've got a few Marvel things that are coming, and that's super fun and exciting. But again, like, it's not great residuals. I mean, the best money I've seen, not it's not about the money aspect of it, but again, this is something that I was never told when I was not in this market.
Yeah.
The most lucrative jobs, some of the most lucrative jobs have literally been ADR looping sessions where you
Amazing.
get on the residual pool of the film. Like
Right.
I did one day on the movie Megan, with a little robotic girl, and that first residual check was like $16,000, and it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
Nothing had paid out like that in one check.
Well,
And
you bring up really great points. And Dina, I'm going to bring it out to the group in a moment, so keep your questions. Um, what I think is important that I love about Kiff is he's willing to talk about all aspects of the career, and he's so right in the people don't talk about this aspect so much because there's a lot of hype, I guess is the best word, right?
sure,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, why don't we just open it up? Dina, you had a question. You raised your hand, so let's just let you jump in.
It's not a positive, so I will give that
Okay.
caveat. But have you had to deal with when you do ADR does pay much better than a lot of other stuff? Totally agree. But have you bumped into recoupment?
Uh,
Can you
Not
define
yet.
that for the audience too? Can you define recoupment?
So um, that's where you get residuals, but then something happens like there's returns or like on streaming or return on videotape or return on whatever, and all of a sudden they start taking the money back
Hmm.
from
Ah,
you, so you actually see parentheses and negative amounts. So
I
for example, I
Yeah.
did Jungle Book
Hmm.
a gazillion years ago, Jungle Book 2, and I got a really good check, and then for 10 years now I make money on like free, via VOD or VD, whatever, VOS,
Yeah.
all these different things, streaming service. And then I get the parenthesis and then they zero it out. They take the money back because apparently someone somewhere returned something or canceled a subscription, and our recoupment is where they take it from
wow.
after
Oh my
taxes.
God.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
I have not
Never heard of
encountered
that before.
And
there was
our
one.
union allows it.
Yeah, is mind blowing.
So if you ever look at your paycheck and you look down the column and you see something in parentheses and that amount has been deducted, complain. They should not be doing
Yeah.
that. We get
Yeah.
0.1, 0.0.1, 0.01% of their total budget, and that's where they take their money back. is from ours.
So it's
So
basically, you have to return money, recouping the money that they gave you
you have
already.
no choice.
Yeah.
They do
No,
it. It just
I'm
shows
saying
up that
there
way.
that's the in effect what's happening. Yeah. Ugh,
Yeah,
wow.
I'm
Never heard of it.
tuned my attention to that. Thank you so much, Dina. And like, I mean,
Yeah.
I have
Watch
had,
your paycheck.
yeah, with that specific film with Megan, there was, I don't know if it was a claim from another actor or a claim from the studio that they wanted to remove the loop group from, which they can't do. We got a date, we got the contract, we did the work. And whether you worked as a featured extra, but you got upgraded to a, if you're a principal, like I have a contract, or I'm raising a claim right now with Warner Brothers for Justice League. So I did 2 days on that, either as scratch, but I heard myself in the final. I voice matched Ben Affleck, and there were a couple people who weren't residualized, and I'm one of those people. So I'm in the process of trying to get. I mean, for every 10 every 10 emails I send to SAG, I get one in response. So it's kind of
Oh,
like
they're
you really
terrible.
do. Yeah, you have to be a squeaky wheel. You know,
Really, really
and
good.
and hearing that from other folks who are within, like Bob Bergen. I'm sure all you guys know Bob, and his, he's also very transparent about things, and he has said too, is like no one really understands, to give the union folks grace, how big that organization is and how small the leadership is and how small, like, the folks in there who are doing the day-to-day work, who are trying to meet us. So having that knowledge helps me navigate that and go, look, I'm okay.
With
I want
kindness.
my funds, right? But like moving forward with kindness, precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
You know
hard.
what I have to say? Oh, go ahead, Dina.
The other thing to watch out for is if you are in a cartoon or in voicing something or scratching. This happened to another actor where um, in a big feature, the principal actors were in the room and the TV was playing, and on the TV was a something going on where it was the actor's voice, and they never credited him or gave him credit for it. So he's going saying, you can't, that's lifting. You can't lift. It's not AI lifting. It's pre-AI, but
Oh
they
yeah.
lifted his whatever, Junior Thunderbirds, whatever it was, and put it on the TV screen to play in the background, and they didn't credit him or pay him. So we all talk, and it's like, hey, I saw, and they're like, wait, what? And then you have to be a little bit, I agree, Kev, squeaky wheel, but
The
with
Makes
kindness.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, with kindness, it's really important. And like with credits, I've learned too that sometimes it's in the contract that credits are at the producer's discretion. So they
Yes.
may, you always appreciate, as certainly as a loop group. I mean, if you're on camera during the day, generally you'll get it. But like if you're in a loop group situation, often the ADR director's credit is the credit for everybody. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, hey, there he is. That was us. But sometimes, it's always, especially when it's a high profile project, like it was so cool to see like Star Wars Force Awakens, or see, like, my credit in Call of the Wild and stuff like that. Like my parents were in LA and we went to go see that at the El Cap right before the world shut down, and I voice matched Harrison Ford in that, and I got a screen credit. So to be at the El Cap with my parents and they see my name go up after what,
Fun.
next to Harrison Ford's name, I
Uh,
mean, it was awesome.
Historic. Yeah, it's
Anyway,
historic.
so
It's like a
it's
special moment.
it's it's all that. It's
Well,
it's good and bad, and every job has that, and I think that's important for people to remember and know.
Well, I think this is great for a biz chat conversation because it's totally related to the drag work, of the life of an actor, whether you're on camera or you're a voice actor. And I was just thinking about how maybe this is a place where AI can literally help on the tracing and tracking of all this stuff,
Sure.
from a union and a non-union standpoint. I'm not sure how that would work technologically, but it seems like that's a great way for AI to step in and actually support actors in a
I'll tell you,
way.
I recently got. I think this was in the fall. I got an AI assistant, And the intention behind that was the inciting incident was my wife has dyslexia and she misread an email with times
Okay.
and missed an event
Mm.
and was just completely bereft, and she was able to get it worked out and everything. And then I was like, there's got to be some way to take from one source of information to scan it and then just paste it into the calendar so that that content is there's no human imperfection interacting with it. And
Right.
I found this AI assistant called Ohai, OHAI, uh,
OHAI.
and what it does is I set up preferences within Gmail to forward emails from my agents to a text bot that texts me because I'm driving a ton. So that allows me to know that my agents or managers have sent me an email, and it gives me a summary of that email while I'm driving. And then I can
Sweet.
respond yes or no or ignore, and it will add it to my calendar automatically. And then there it is. Now I have, it's just really slick, and it's taken stress off of that scheduling aspect, which, as you know, is one of our most consistent challenges of like just trying to, sort.
Especially if you're in LA having to drive around in all that
Oh
traffic.
man, well, when you
And
get
reassure everyone you're okay with all the fires, nothing's impacted you.
yeah, not directly.
Okay.
I mean, we have a lot of we have a. I mean,
No. Mhm.
yeah, we know a ton of folks
Yeah.
and folks at our daughter's school. I think 15 families lost their homes in Altadena.
Wow. So
Um,
sad. So sorry.
yeah,
Let me see. Raise your hand visually if you guys want to ask a question like Dina did, because that way I can see you and you don't have to use the system since there's um, a nice cadre of us, but not too many. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. It was really interesting to hear you say that you feel that you really need to be in the market, and by that I interpret that to mean living in Los Angeles to do video games and animation. I've heard different people speak to, having different thoughts about that, and you seem
yeah,
pretty clear about that. So that stood out to me, and I just wonder your thoughts about that, if you want to expand on that at all.
yeah. Um,
Good question.
we're in a post-pandemic world, which makes it a little bit more open, but I think a lot of it comes down to relationships. So let from what I was always told, you just needed to be here, period. But you can also build those relationships, get the auditions, book the job, and then say, oh, by the way, I am an X and so. For example, The Croods is a perfect example because I was on that show and then I got cast on camera shooting in Australia. And I had to find a way to protect that job.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the producers at DreamWorks, I'll do everything possible to make my records. If my session is at 4 a.m., my session's at 4, and I will find a studio in Brisbane, or I will. And fortunately, what I was able to do was, build my sound booth in my hotel room, and it was in the center of. It was in my bathroom. So, but I narrated 2 audiobooks from that space.
Uh,
I did, oh God, at least 15 episodes of The Croods and
Wow.
multiple anime. Did some dubbing there, bunch of commercials and promo. Like I did not have to stop my work, and it was just about open communication and saying, "Here's where I am. Here's the challenges." Now, if I was in Australia when that audition came down, I don't know that I would have. I would
Booked
have
it.
beat it. Part of the reason I say all this stuff, Paul, is that this town they have who they need.
mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, you've got to meet them there. Be able to come to Warner Brothers and go to Underground to be able to go in the studio and record with Dutch. It does matter. Now, if you get to do 2 or 3 sessions and then they love you and they love the thing and you're like, listen, I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and this is my home. And it happened with a lot of folks who migrated during the pandemic of like, I just went home, but I can work here. And they're like, great, then we'll work with you. But it varies studio to studio. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily to it in terms of who will work with who. So it's not to say that you need to be here, but I do think it's a significant advantage if they're doing a group record for you to be able to go over to the studio at Igloo or wherever and stand in the room with the rest of the people and play. So like it's not to say that it's a hard and fast rule, but like with all things, there's a lot of nuance. The other part of that is like the people who I know plenty of people who are like, you know what, I'm not coming in anymore. But they got status and the ability to say that. So they can live in Montana and have a booth in their backyard. I mean, even on the crudes, we started the show, we table read. The table read was a spreader event. It happened literally like March 12th of 2020. And then that weekend, Disneyland shut down. So then we were like, well, I just landed a series regular, an animated series for DreamWorks. Is that going away? And 2 months later, we hear from our agents like they're going to move forward, but we're going to try to do it remotely. So, well, it's a cast of 10 people on Zoom, and 2 or 3 of us had either ISDN or Source Connect. So the rest of it was assistants from DreamWorks and assistants from the studios driving around town with laptops, microphones, headphones, video.
Wow.
Like coming over to your house and setting two massive Pelican cases on your porch. And then you would go out, bring your Pelican case in, set the monitor up so that you could, with the camera, everything, they made it idiot proof. So all they needed to do was connect to your Wi-Fi, and then they ran the entire session. So like the manpower involved with being able to deliver quality, consistent audio across a television series was madness. And we did like 3 group records on Zoom where we were all recording ourselves and then would upload the WAV file or whatever. And then, invariably there'd be one guy who screwed up. And, and then the poor studios, the studios who are not DreamWorks, but like Soundworks or Mark Grau or one of those studios, these guys rely on actors coming in to be directed, and their rooms are empty. So I said, as soon as it's possible, I don't mind like not having to tell my family to be quiet for 4 hours while I'm in a session. What if I can I come to Soundworks? And they had opened that up in June of that year. So I was able to go there, mask up, another actor would come in, there'd be 40 minutes in between, and we were able to do it that way. And then our director would read every other character. So like that was pandemic recording, but I'm hard pressed to say it's that much different now. I mean, the spaces, I can go in, no one's wearing masks, but I went to Nickelodeon a couple weeks ago and did a thing, and it was the same deal. It's like there are group records happening, but it's still very, very slow to come back.
And I just wanted to throw in that during 2022, I think it was, I had a private conversation with an animation casting person, and this person said they had gone from one big entity to another big entity, and said that animation was going to grow. Animation was a big category that was going to grow. And 2 years later, I'm still wondering about that. Are you seeing growth in that market? Because what I have seen, and I don't know if you and Dina could, I don't know, I don't remember, Dina, everything that you've been doing lately, but in terms of the animation market, I've seen a lot of non-original English coming into America to get dubbed, and not a lot of new production. But then I know there's a lot of new production going on in general, in a general sense. Can you speak to that?
I can speak to what
what you've experienced.
I have to filter everything through the fact that I'm a white American male in my family. So,
Right.
like the stuff that comes, there may be a ton of preschool animation in the pipeline, but
Right.
that's not me. So,
Right.
like, I also can speak to the type of stuff that I get cast for. So
Yeah.
I'm not reading the trades in terms of what's getting approved. I probably should, but to have a better sense. But part of the challenge for me is I have enough of a jealous streak that I'm like, if all this stuff is going on, how come I'm not getting at the table? You know what I mean? So then it's just an artistic injury, and I'm sitting on my tucking my thumb in a corner, going, no one wants me. Well, okay, yeah, but when you're right for the thing, it'll find you.
Okay, well, let
So,
me ask you a different question then. And I look at animationmagazine.com for a lot of information. I think that's what it's called. Go ahead. What were you going to say then before I?
well, I will say there is a lot of dubbing going on, but dubbing
Mhm.
does not pay well at all. Where dubbing pays is in fans.
Mm.
So my wife says all the time, things pay in different ways. And when it comes to an anime contract, whether you're doing a live action dub or an anime dub, the SAG approved dubbing rate is anywhere from $95 an hour for a 2 hour minimum to $150 for a 2 hour minimum
Nothing.
plus
Yeah.
10%. No
Yeah.
usage. No
Yeah.
usage.
Nothing.
So
Nothing.
you are
Wow.
No residuals, nothing.
Single session pay. That's it. Done.
yeah, but the good
It's
thing
called
on
a
that,
buyout.
it's a
Buyout.
straight. But again, this is the other part, and why I chase that work is you
You get
just
to know
never
people.
know what's going to
Mhm.
catch fire with fans, and now you see voice actors showing up at I mean, my
Comic
buddy
Cons
Adriel,
and stuff.
yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, Adam MacArthur is the lead on a show called Jujutsu Kaisen. And that show is one of the most popular animes in the world. And he's the lead dub voice.
Mm.
He is every
English.
single weekend in English.
Mm.
And every single weekend, he is in another city doing cons and doing signings and doing meetups and pop figures and like all this other stuff. And it's like, this is the thing. You have to make a choice if you want to participate in that particular
Aspect.
iPad. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah. Because
100% up to you.
there was another woman, very talented. I can't remember her name, but she lived in Alaska, and she was part of Voiceover Improv. She was doing the workouts and stuff, and she was busy 3/4 of the year going around because she had done certain games that she had gotten a huge fan base, and she was
Yeah,
touring like a lot of the year. You
yeah.
know, I mean, I asked her what it was like to live in Alaska, and she says, "Oh, part time," because she's touring. Yeah,
Hotels, and you're out there with Greg Berger and Keone Young and the guys who you see like always on the doing the panels and doing the signings, and the attention and stuff is fun, but it's you know it's
different.
it's
Yeah, it's not in front of the mic work.
it's
Or
work.
in front of the camera. Yeah, it's a different kind of work. Um, what other questions are out there? Ken.
So, kind of playing off the studio, and oh, and hi, how you doing? um, how much are you doing in your home studio now versus say before the pandemic, and how much are you doing, back in directed professional studios in general?
Right now, right now, as I'm sitting here, I would say probably 80% home studio, 20% out and about. Where in the pandemic, I was doing 90% in studio, 10% at home. Part of that too is like I was doing some promo stuff for IFC. I still am, and in the past quarter, I've landed a couple commercial things, and generally commercial stuff is Source Connect from home. But there's been a few commercial clients that are like, hey, we'd really love if you would come join us at Lime, and I'm like, man, say less. Lime is a great studio. I'm happy to go, and so like I always prefer to go to studio. If I can do that, I request it. It's good for the studio. It's good for me. It's good for my mental health. This is good to get out. But lately that's not been the case. The other challenge is, on camera stuff. I mean, almost everything I do is self tapes, and even the callbacks have been via Zoom. So, I'm looking forward to more and I don't know if that's going to change.
Let me
Uh,
ask you a little quick question around that, and then Paul has a follow-up question too. One of the things about working, you mentioned about being in LA and knowing that that's partly about being available, but I'm also thinking that it's nice to go to studios because you get to know people better, don't you? Because you have a interaction. I mean, you're not just online and,
yeah, I mean, to an extent, it depends. Like, we've all been to the sessions where you have a gregarious group of creatives
mm,
in the studio there who are like, "We loved your audition. You were amazing. Come on in." And that's great. And you get to, I hate the term press flesh. I can't believe that came to mind. You get to shake hands, you get to meet people. But more often than not, I've gone to a studio like Lime or whatever.
yeah,
They're like, "Okay, everyone is in the room. Why don't you stay out here until they're ready for you?" And you're like, "All right, cool." And you sit there and you have a cup of coffee and you play with the dog.
little
Yeah,
chill.
super cool. And then it's like, "Okay, we're going to bring you in." And then you go in and you go into the sound booth. You
Right.
control room.
No.
And then it's like, "Hey, I'm Jared. Hey, I'm Steve. Hi guys, nice to meet you. All right, well, we loved your audition. Let's do this thing." And then one person talks to you, and then you're done, and they email your contract, and you're out. The difference is literally booth
Small.
location.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Location and a little bit
remember,
of brand.
I don't do anything really in person anymore. It's so rare. And so I remember when I used to go to the studios in San Francisco, a little bit in LA, and I felt like the difference for me, and you can, tell me what it's like today if this is still true. The difference was meeting people in person. So that's that for me was less happening that you just go in and out, like you don't really talk to them. That's like a online session. More it was like you get to talk to the engineer, you see people, you do shake their hand, but it's a different vibe entirely to do that. And I guess, I gave that up by choosing to be able to be in two different places and not being in LA anymore. So I just thought I'd ask, I mean, and it's not just about that. It's about like maybe having lunch with people or stuff like that too, yeah? Location. I mean, I think it's important to talk about location. That's what I was trying to bring up.
Yeah, that's part of it. And um, since we stopped auditioning at the talent agencies and during the pandemic, CESD has gotten rid of their booths. I literally have not seen in person most of my agents in the 5 years of the pandemic. And I'm going to on Wednesday. We're buying them lunch and then we're going to go see some people. And I ran into a couple of them at Comic-Con, but like for the most part, we're still trying to figure out how to gradually get back. I've
Yeah.
got more important than casting people, ad people, ADR people, whoever, like other actors have been the people I've seen. And I
Mm.
have a group of friends that I've done with LA Comic Con, like this Voice NATO group. So I see on the regular, maybe at least once a month, we get together for lunch with a handful of those guys.
Well,
And
don't you think that's a really important part of your
oh,
business in a way?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
I think seeing, when I was in Northern California, when I was in Southern California, and then I'll bring in Paul, I always thought that getting together with other actors was so important because you can talk like this. Now I set this up because I miss it.
Yeah,
I also think it's important to talk about, the different classes you're taking, whether you had a good or bad experience, sharing and then learning from others what they learned from their, it's also unique and individual that you get to hear different aspects. Yeah.
it's the advantage of like things like VO Atlanta, that's voiceover. Like those things have never been more important. You know what I mean? To be able to like just the fellowship of the whole
The
thing of like,
fellowship. Yeah. Fellowship.
or
That's a great way to put it.
creating virtual spaces like this where we
Yeah.
can still get together. Like,
Yeah.
and the great thing when I was in Australia in particular, because it was so isolated,
Yeah.
my virtual spaces became so important because it was like this is where we just get to make eye contact and I'm not
Yeah.
staring,
Yeah.
staring at the wall,
Yeah.
um, or
Yeah.
or in VR. So it's nice to be able to and valuable to create these spaces or seek them out.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
So
Okay, let's bring in Paul for his follow-up question.
Hey, Kiff, first, thank you so much for being here to talk to us. I really appreciate it, man.
Sure, Paul. Thank you.
Um, And I was just really curious about the I don't want to harp on location too much, but to what extent does everything you were talking about with being in LA apply to the video game market as well, or is that a little more decentralized?
I think it's more so. More so. I'm just thinking about the games I'm involved with. I very seldom record video game at home. And the biggest reason for that is that stuff lives under NDA. If you're working on a Marvel game or a game for, I don't know, some developer, they are reticent to just send you copy. I am always cold reading when I go to the video game session. And they can protect and lock up. And there's a lot of digital protections and things. And the other part of that is motion capture and facial capture. So often you'll see folks like how it's mic'd. The last game I worked on, I went over to Igloo, and whenever you record at Igloo, generally you walk into the booth and there's a 416, and then there's also a little felt cap that you wear when you do mocap. And on that are clipped two little lavaliers, and it's to record you in stereo. So they put that on top of your head, and then you have the microphone, or they just turn the mic feed off and they're just recording you from this, so that I have the freedom to move for exertions and punches and proximity and all those things. So I think video game work, even more so, is something that's recorded here for both the security and for the technical reasoning, because games are so much more sophisticated than they used to be. And the other part of it is you want to be able to be part of the conversation when it comes to motion capture, because a lot of that stuff is like, you might not have been trained in mocap or whatever, but it's basically black box theater work. So you're working with as if you're in week 2 or week 3 of a rehearsal process. So you've got fake walls that are clear, made out of plywood, and you got C-stands standing in for lasers and all kinds of things. And you use your imagination and your improv skills and a little bit of your theater training to navigate that space. And the challenge with that is you need to be off book. So that you'll get your scripts.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
Watch,
Yeah.
Troy Baker play Indiana Jones. He has to learn all that dialogue. It's not teleprompted. You're looking in every direction. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of important that you know your
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
that's something that's run a lot of folks off. And it's like, well, this is the nature of that work. If you want
Yeah.
to play, guard number 4. And that's the other thing when you're doing mocap is you might play 80 characters in the game. And you're not paid for every one of those characters. You're paid for the day.
Mm.
So, it's looking for union guidance on these things as things are changing so rapidly. You really do have to maintain a sense of openness and go, well, this is what it is today. And there,
Right.
and in the grand scheme of things, I made way more money perhaps than I should have for my use in commercial work. And I make way less for my work in video games than I should for the effort. So
Yeah.
like it balances out. It really does. I mean, when I had a class, there's no way, and I'm not to be crass, but I mean I made probably 60 grand on this Kellogg's corn pop spot that I worked for 15 minutes on. For what I brought to that commercial, that is highway robbery. I am still working against that amount of guilt in doing
Oh.
other things. It all balances out. We're actors. I'm not. I'm not. I really do believe that there's balance to this, and that if you maintain a sense of balance, it helps you live in a place not of necessarily gratitude or I don't deserve it, but it helps you live in a place of like I'm a blue collar working actor, and I can keep the lights on and feed my family in the hardest town to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have nothing but joy. And there are times where sure I'd love to make a little bit more for this, or I'll fight. I worked on that. I need to be
Yeah.
compensated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the dubbing rate is poor. Okay, but that work, if I do 3 sessions on an anime, that all that work had been done. All of that work had been done overseas. That work was paid for as under an animation contract for those actors who I am just mimicking what they did. My participation, if I don't want them to turn it all over to AI, I'm going to go in there and do it, even for that low rate, because I get a little bit of residual glory. I'll take it, along with the fact that, why should the production company have to pay the same rate to remake the thing just for it to play in the United States when the option to watch it with subtitles is there? I'm happy. I really do think of dubbing as an opportunity to participate in the post-production process. And I think, as much as it doesn't pay what working on a Marvel show would pay, but it's not a Marvel cartoon. And they're not animating to my voice. I am.
Right.
So, like, getting twisted up about what we should get stops this town. That's what happened. For 2 years, so many people dropped out of this business. So many people had to completely give up because we were like, we're still in the middle of a video game strike. And it's like, what are we fighting for? AI protections, yes, those are important, 100%. But, like, I feel like when we become intractable and no flexibility, and refuse to come to the table because we're going to get fucked. We're bending over and taking it. Like, I've been in these SAG meetings where people are like, this is an outrage and we need to. It's like, that's great, but man, you're also not working.
Right.
No one's working, and it has a much greater effect. So there's compromise, and what we do. It's easy to get into this space of what we do is so important, but
well, and I have to say, and to add on to that, I always think about this, the commercials are considered really high in even in non-union voiceover work. Commercials are like where the money is, people think, and they and so I think, well, if you scoot back to kind of, I was having this image when you were talking about the big picture and looking at it from the perspective of the business as a whole. So you were talking about the video game business or the anime business and how they had that production done where the actors were truly doing the acting from the script before the animation actually happened. So they're the originators of the emotional content, which now you're mimicking, right? And when you look at commercials, we are participating in that, but we're not the only element, and we're usually the last thought of element because we are the least important to those advertisers in that advertising agency situation. And
it's not to diminish our participation and the value of what we do, but
no.
it's also not to overblow.
Exactly.
Because it lives large in our minds.
Yeah.
If I get this Super Bowl spots, I mean,
but because it's large, because it's large in our own world of being able to pay for the roof over our heads, just like you were saying before. Yeah. So it's all this mix. And, I don't know if everybody has the same experience. I mean, I'm sure everybody has different experiences with what that mix of business is for them, but it's really great to get your perspective. And I did promise that I would only keep you a half an hour, and it's already been over that, which we knew it would probably happen. And you were all okay.
I'm fine.
You were all okay.
I'm fine to hang and participate until about 9:45 my time.
Well, I think that we want to keep it to closer to the original time, just simply because that way we respect everybody's time that did come. Does anybody have a question for Kiff at this point? Yes, Ken.
Selfish question. Will we hear any more of your podcast all over Voiceover, or is that mothballed?
Yes. I got distracted. And busy with another show called Mad Rewind. My friend Brandy Stillwell and I co-produced the show. She worked on Mad TV back in the day, and we did a podcast interviewing participants, cast members, executive producers of the show, and have been co-producing that. So my bandwidth for making shows on top of life has been strained. But I was just thinking about that last night, Ken, about please send me suggestions of who you'd like to have on the show. That's another thing that I keep forgetting to do. But I have so many asks out and so many affirmative responses, and I just need to pull the trigger and do this and get them going. So yeah, Ken, I make a promise to you that there will be more podcasts for it. The show is called All Over Voiceover.
All over
All
voiceover.
Over
What
Voiceover with
was
Kiff.
really fun about it is you would bring in people that were really kind of not part of the immediate voiceover life. Like you would bring in people who were teachers, or you brought in the edges of it with mocap and that sort of thing too. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wanted
doing
to.
that.
I mean, I've really leaned into relationships that I already had that made it easy to bring them in.
Yeah.
So it was like, who can I? For the first chunk, I was like, no one's gonna come. So I spent the money to rent a studio and had them come. So I was able to
Oh,
like, I mean, I could have now the studio's nice enough. I've had a couple people who I don't know super well come over and record, and that's been really, really great. But
very cool.
yeah, yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for making the time for us this morning.
Sure.
And everybody, yeah, give them a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us for as much or as little as it was. We are going to go on. Look at Paul's got his all. Okay, cool. So, any last words for people and about voiceover and improvisation? Just because that's how we met each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Take everything I said with a grain of salt. It's a combination of my point of view with how this industry has been revealed to me. My
Hmm.
experience is uniquely mine, and your experience is uniquely yours. And if you disagree with thoughts or notions about what's driving me, man, awesome. You got to do what works best for you, and that's what matters. Um,
Totally.
and when it comes to improvisation, I've recently started using improv in my on-camera auditions too. There's been
Good.
there's a handful of I've been a little bit more reticent to do it. Like
Mm,
there are certain shows where you really do have to get it exactly letter perfect, and
mm.
most of those are Chuck Lorre sitcoms because those writers are like, this is what we need. But like for short films, for longer chunks, for procedurals, that's the other thing. Is like improv is more than just the words. Improv is about choices. Improv is about what's in the room with you.
Mm,
And it might not be on the page, but that is an invitation for you to fill it out.
yeah.
Use your imagination, lean into it, let it warm you and inform you. I did an audition. I'm still like shortlisted. I guess that's how it works for like this untitled uh comedy project. And in the audition, I got choked up, and there was no reason for the character to get choked up, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he does. And that was the hero take. And I was like, I want to show you the actor I am. And I want to show you how I might fit in your show. And shifting focus from I want you to see what I bring to the table and not just here's me reading your copy. Does that distinction make sense? And
Yeah.
I think that um I think that improv really helps us do that. And the other thing I'll leave you with is do not forget environment. Use environment. Use environment for lead-ins. Like I booked some work on a new animated series, and I know it's related 100% to the environment I established at the outset of each of the sides. And there's no context. There's never
No,
context for any
no.
of these things.
Right.
It's just like, here's the line. And then it's like, well, what do I find online to figure out, oh, who might this character be? Oh, I have an idea. Well, I'm going to make a big swing, and I'm going to say another character's name that this character might know. And I was right, but it was also like that knowledge changed the way I played that character, changed the emotional content of how I played. Like, I know I'm talking to my
Yeah.
daughter, but then it's like, oh, I figured out who that daughter was, radically transformed how I talked to her. So, like, those kind of things, um, just help you. So
Yeah.
stay aware of what's popular, what's out there, so that when people are using those references, it makes sense and
Yeah.
things.
You're good at that. Oh, you're so good at that.
So there's billboards all over town advertising
Yeah,
the deals,
yeah.
but it helps. It's
Well,
weird.
direct from Los Angeles, everybody. This has been Kiff VandenHuevel on Biz Chat Monday, VO Influencer. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now. And